Myself. G'day, everybody. Welcome to Shooting the Breeze with Lady Liberty. I am Lady Liberty, or Kate Pantanel, and I am back. I am back in the best state in Australia, Western Australia. I flew in last Monday night, very late at night, and I hit the ground running. I have been on the ground covering the state election, which, of course, is this Saturday, the 8th of March. All eyes are turned to the 8th of March. And I have joining me tonight, if he is online, I can't see him. I'm going to have to get some technical help here. My good friend, a person whose name came up when I moved here back in 2020. He is one of the names that was floated around, and everything I've heard about him, he's been a trooper, a fighter for gun rights in this beautiful state, and he is joining me very shortly tonight. But just to give a recap on what I have been up to since I've been back, I flew in, like I said, late last Monday night, and my first stop was Western Australian Parliament. I went in and I had meetings with some of the candidates. I met with the Legalised Cannabis Party, Dr. Brian Walker, the Honourable Dr. Brian Walker, who has been so outspoken for shooters' rights in this state, even though he is from a party that is technically quite left-leaning, but when it comes to gun rights and when it comes to fighting for people and individual freedoms, he has been on the front foot in the upper house in the Western Australian Parliament. So he's the first person I got off the plane to see. And of course, joining him for that exclusive interview that's on my channels. It's up on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on Spotify. I put it everywhere that I could. That interview also included the candidate for Secret Harbour, Jim Matters. He is running against my mate, the Police Minister, Paul Papalia. I'm still devastated that I did not, and I was not in the position where I could run. There are forces in this world that are against me, even though I'm just trying to do what is right for the people. So I couldn't put my hat in the ring for that race, even though as much as I wanted to, sometimes in life you just have to walk away and spend your time fighting somewhere else you could win. So that's what I have been doing. I have been running my legal action fundraiser. I'm so close. I am so close to raising enough money to pay for the advice from the King's Council, who is ready to go. We have all been receiving these confiscation letters in the post. Push-button release firearms are suddenly categorised as semi-autos. What's going on with lever action firearms? That's something I'll ask my dear friend Jack about tonight when I can get him on the stream. I don't know what's going on. I'll have to get Mr. Liberty to come and help me with technology, because once again it has failed me. But that's what I have been doing. That's why I'm in town. This is my home state. I moved here in February 2020 from Sydney, where I was working for Senator David Leyonhjelm. We all know what happened there. It's getting very hard to win a Senate seat as a minor party in this country, and that's by design. That is by design. So after he lost, I moved across to this great state, my home. I'm so happy to be back. And I came here and worked for the Honourable Aaron Stonehouse in the upper house, where I saw what went on firsthand during those dark years of the early 2020s. I'm wearing my Premier Mark MaoGowan shirt. Yes, I have not forgotten what he did to this state. And let's not forget, he is the one that started these gun laws. It was under his watch that he pushed for a complete rewrite of the Firearms Act in this state without consulting with the people, without listening to what we wanted. And now we find ourselves in 2025, the biggest gun confiscation scheme since 1996. Firearms like lever actions that have been around since the 1800s are now being described as semi-automatics in the media by the police minister, by our government. You can see it is not about targeting criminals who use guns. It is about getting rid of registered firearms owned by legally abiding people. And that's what they said. That's what they said when they trotted all this out. Let's not forget that is what it is about, getting rid of legally held firearms from the peaceful people of this state. We have not seen this level of control and overreach since 1996. I'm old enough to remember 1996. I still have that fire burning in my belly from witnessing what happened to my father, a peaceful man who had to hand in guns because of the actions of a madman in Tassie. And now look at where we are now. I can't believe that. I'm getting a bit emotional, because this is my home and I do not want to see our state turn into a place where peaceful people can no longer do what we need to do peacefully. We can't help our farmers. They are screaming, they are struggling. The veterans, I have talked about that and I keep talking about it, the ones who were disarmed at the start of all of this. because they shoot long-range precision rifle, and apparently the state has decided that that is too much of a risk to have veterans shooting long-range precision rifle. This is where we're at in WA. I can't believe it. I cannot believe we're here. So thank you for joining me in WA. Like I keep saying, I'm so happy to be back. This is the flag that I designed when I ran for the Senate back in 2022, a long time ago now. And it says, don't tread on me, because that's what life is about. Do what you want as long as you're not hurting anybody else. And that is the philosophy that I live by. And I know that's the philosophy that my friends in Legalised Cannabis and also Shooters and Fishers Farmers Party, that is why I'm so supportive of those people running in this state election. So let me find out where my good friend Jack is. We were just on the phone before. Mr. Liberty, would you like to help me? Is his camera on? Very good question. I think it was. I did hear him pop into this stream. Just excuse me. Talk among yourself. Have a glass of Margaret River Red like I'm doing. Good drop, not a bad drop. I am South Australian, so I'm very fussy with my wine. But I'm enjoying a Margaret River drop tonight. Let's just see what we can do. Let me invite him again. He's not in the chat. Where is he? Here, plus. There he is. Oh my God, I found you. Jack, I am so sorry. I'm such a boomer when it comes to technology, and I feel like I'm too young to be a boomer, but here I am. Jack bloody Carmody, how are you?
I am doing well. I've been very busy today. I've been all over the station, and taking phone calls, putting stuff together, and really researching as much as I can further into the act and finding out what other surprises they might have for us. So
where are we at? So I arrived last week. I've been following this journey for so long, and I've been following you since I got here back in 2020. You're a bloody inspiration, and I'm so grateful that I've gotten to know you. Even though we've only talked once, we're both very busy people, but I feel like we're fighting the same fight in tandem. You, of course, have been so outspoken for so long, and when all the new laws dropped, you were the first one out there calling it out, calling it for what it is, saying this is not what the people want, this is not what property owners want. You own a big property in this beautiful state. Where are we at now? What can you tell us? What's happening with push button release firearms, lever action? Some people saying they're not banned, some people saying they are. What can you tell the people of WA when it comes to where we're at with the gun laws?
well, look, it could almost be a blessing in disguise. The absolute madness where they're saying that a lever release rifle like the Vernie Caron or a lever release shotgun are semi-automatics. The flip side to this is that thousands of these have been licensed all across Australia over the last decade, and in Western Australia we have got thousands of them, and they're saying they're the same as a semi-automatic. No crimes have been committed with these. There's been no mass shootings. There's been no, blood in the streets. Nothing like the Premier and our dearly beloved police minister keep on claiming having firearms out there is going to do. So we, as the people, have actually demonstrated that we are responsible enough to have semi-automatic firearms, and there should be no restrictions on them. The minister's words himself that if these are semi-automatics, so good on you, champ. You've just given us a little bit of ammunition there to say that you clearly think that we are responsible enough to have the tools for the job. It's nothing to do with the firearms, the tools. It's the people, and we as shooters have proven that we are the most law-abiding group in Australia, and we should have no restrictions on the tools. So they are standing by their surprise attack in the regulations of calling them a prohibited firearm, which really is something that we can line up on and say that they had a buyback period. then they decided that, yep, we're going to close the buyback and then we're going to release the regulations that are going to go, surprise, gotcha. And I think the biggest part of that is that they have said that there's going to be no compensation for people with these now prohibited firearms, and that's you're going to have to reapply for another category A or B firearm. You're going to have to pay for that. So it's quite clearly just a financial attack on shooters during a time where everyone has got not a lot of money to play with. And that is one way to hurt people is you cripple them economically. And that's how you oppress people. And unfortunately, that generally doesn't lead to anything good for a society. But no, they are standing by their position on these lever release firearms. And it's yeah, really, it's a joke. People sit there and go, well, he was in the defence force. He should know what the difference is between them. Um, but they're happy to just sort of maintain the media, and the media at the moment isn't very supportive of shooters, and it seems to be very leaning in that leftward direction to say these things are scary. And yeah, they timed it in, and I think the biggest shame of it all is that we have got so many people in Western Australia who went, well, look, I've got a bolt action 22, and I've got a lever release 22, and I'm going to be over my limit, so I'll hand in doing the right thing, doing the right thing that worked well for us during COVID, and I will hand in my bolt action, and I'll retain my lever action. And now you're sitting there going, well, hang on a second. Now you're saying that this is a prohibited item. I can't get compensation for it. I'm going to have to start my license from scratch because I might have only owned one or two of these firearms. And you've just pulled the rug straight out from underneath us. And it's just one of the most disingenuous political acts I've ever seen. It is almost as bad as MaoGowan saying that he wasn't going to alter the electoral system here, and now they've gotten rid of the entire thing. Within a week, they stripped the regional voice. And I have to sit there and look at it and go, well, it's great that you got the MaoGowan because General Mao was a very big one on making sure that you control the agriculture sector. You take control of those people, you oppress them, you remove their tools, their weapons, their firearms. The hammer and sickle. They were taking away things like a sickle away from farmers so they couldn't defend themselves. Then they brought in land courts, which is very similar to what they were trying to do with this Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, to then redistribute the wealth amongst the people that they want. So the agriculture sector is one of the areas that a socialist or communist state fear the most because they are generally an area that you can't control because they will grow what they want when they want. And they are self-reliant and they can operate without the government being there. And what a government like we have at the moment needs is people who need them. They are a needy group. They want people to be desperate and have to go to them for protection, for income, for anything. And yeah, you target agriculture, you are then impacting those people who have a connection to land. So a lot of recreational shooters have a connection to land by knowing a producer, going out and helping out, because as a farmer, you've got 99 other jobs. The last thing you want to do is then have to go out and spend 4 hours a night shooting foxes to protect your lambs. And so, guys from Perth, that sort of thing go, yeah, no, I'll happily come out and I will whack them for you. I'll have a good time and you're helping out. And now they're jeopardizing that relationship by, well, I disagreed completely with the property letter system. It was never something that was ever recommended in the NFA or the Law Reform Commission report. Now what they're doing is they're making it very stressful for farmers to understand the new system. You then have to register online to be able to authorise people that have to be vetted by the police to then be allowed to have a property letter to shoot on your property. It's just making a whole lot of hoops. And realistically, most farmers are going to sit there and go, I don't have the time for this. It's going to break down those relationships. Connection to the country is going to break down. You've lost the country cousin. It's just downhill from there. And they're just trying to sever that tie from knowing that you can be self-reliant and not need, the shopping centre giants and, those control mechanisms that they've got. So, yeah.
Let's talk about property owners first. You are a property owner. You own a big piece of land up in the beautiful state of WA up north. They have changed the property letter system. So if you're tuning in from over east or anywhere around the world, we used to have a system here in WA where if you wanted to be a hunter, you could go into a gun shop and they were selling letters, property letters, which gave you the right to shoot on land and own firearms because you had that right to hunt on someone's land. They have changed that now. They have made it an onus on the property owner to register their property with the state, including the size of the state, what your estimated pest and feral animals are on that property. And then they are limiting the number of people who can come out and shoot on that property, along with the caliber of guns you can use. This is the level of control they are getting down to in WA. We used to have property rights in this country. If it's your property, it's your land, you can do what you want as long as you're not hurting anyone else. That whole principle has now been trodden over by the state of Western Australia. So, Jack, what are the limits on private property that property owners can own in terms of gun limits? Because that's another big one here. You can only own up to 5 guns if you're a hunter or up to 10 if you're a competitive shooter. What are the rules surrounding property owners and farmers in WA? How do you go about getting a license? Can anyone else on your farm use those firearms for pest control? What is going on with farmers in WA with the new laws?
Now, it has been a bit of a mission to be able to get the answers from licensing in regards to this, because if you talk to one person, they'll say A, the next person says B, the next person says C, and contradicts both A and B. So initially, I had been told by someone in licensing, no, you're over your limit of firearms that you've got. You have to transition to the primary producer license. And they said that it's only one person can be a primary producer license holder in an entire agricultural business.
Even if
And
you and
so,
your wife own the land together, even if your lands are both on the lease, only one of you can have the license?
yes, yeah. And so you would be the primary producer. They would be a nominated person, a little bit like a corporate license, but not. It's still vague. Um, and that was a 10 firearm limit for the entire business. And I was pretty taken aback by that, because that really, kind of throws us way out, because I am this is one of our properties. This is the station, and it's larger than Perth. Then we have, the other half of our entire business is down in Esperance, where my brothers run the farms there, and we've got several farms in that area. Now you've got three people in this business, and then that's 3 firearms each if you're under that system. But that means they're my firearms and they're nominated persons. And I was sitting there going, well, hang on a second, this just can't work. This isn't going to work at all. It took until today to get an answer that no, that was incorrect. It's 10 firearms for a primary producer license. An individual will hold that. It's not a corporate license. It's a business license, and it's per title, like per lease rates notice. So that means that, yep, I can have 10 firearms under the primary producer up here, and my brothers can have their 10 across their 2 farms. As in one brother 10, other brother 10. And then I sort of pointed out that, well, I've got a property that's quite large, and I've got my wife as well. Yes, you can say 10 firearms is enough on a station. However, I have 3 308s to make sure that I have a backup, because I can tell you there's nothing worse than having a firearm breakdown and you've got animals that you need to shoot. And that eased a lot of the burden, because initially they'd also said you're only allowed to issue 5 property letters, even for a property that's, greater than the area of Perth. And you're sitting there going, well, hang on a second, that's, yeah, cool, I can have the firearms on my license, but it means I need to move my wife's firearms to my license. She won't have hers. And then if she wants hers, well, that's all of the quota used up. So the biggest problem we have is a lack of knowledge and education inside the firearms licensing branch. They do not know what it is that they're actually administering. And I think the biggest concern is in the phone call, I got told, oh, yeah, no, just no, go read the legislation. Like, read the legislation, like that. It's in the act. It's there. That's where all that information is. Now, I'm not sure if you've tried to find the act, but there's only 46 pages of it published at the moment. So they've only got 46 pages that you can have access to of a act, which is some 241 pages. So firearms owners in Western Australia can only access 46 pages of a document that's 241. So how are we meant to make sure that we are compliant with that? And how are we to ensure that there's no silly bugger going on in the background and they're editing the act before the election, or come Monday, if they've won, if they've lost, we might have something different then. Like, how are we meant to be compliant with that? It doesn't make sense. So the primary producer situation in general, primary producers are going to be reasonably satisfied. I'm not going to use the bloody PGA's thing of perfectly adequate, because it's not. We do need a reasonable amount of firearms, and given where I am, when something breaks down, it's not just drop it in at the shop and get a new one. And we're not like the other states where we can hand in one rifle, get the replacement there and then. We've still got to wait the 28 days to get reapproved and pay for the privilege. So it's primary producers are in a reasonable position. However, the misinformation and the fact that the police refused to attend any workshops with producers and how, like, instructing them how the act was going to work, they said it was because they feared for their safety. I think it's because they didn't actually know the act. They wouldn't go to it.
Let's talk about how this all came about. So back in 2022, you probably remember this as much as I do. The 2021 March state election, let's just make this very clear for those tuning in from over East or around the world. We went to that election in March 2021 when Premier MaoGowan had a popularity rate of 92%. He was Mr. Popularity. They wanted to keep the border closed. That is what the election was about. We had a closed border since March 2020, and then we went to the election in March 2021, and that election was purely about people feeling that they were being kept safe from what we saw happening over East and Victoria and everything happening there. That election was purely about keeping the border closed. That's why Labor won in such a landslide. They won 53 seats in the lower house where government was formed. So they've had absolute majority in there, but also in the upper house. That's what the political landscape looked like back in 2021. Shooters, Fishers and Palmers Party did have Rick Mazza in the upper house. There was a Libertarian in the upper house too, the Honourable Aaron Stonehouse. So before that election, we had a myriad of voices who could talk about firearms with a level of expertise. We went, when I was working for Aaron Stonehouse, and we worked very closely with Rick Mazza on firearms, we went to the government back then and said the WA Firearms Act needs to be looked at. It's from 1973. They had tacked on regulation after regulation after regulation until it became a dog's breakfast. The industry, the organisations, the people wanted to look at it and rewrite it so it would be fit for purpose for everybody, The Labor government back before 2021 said that's not on our agenda this time. We're not looking at firearms. We don't have that to look at. After they won that landslide election in March 2021, by March 2022, the Labor Party came out. It was on the front page of the West Australian newspaper. Jack, you probably have nightmares about this like I do. On the front page of the newspaper here, it's a one-party state, it's a one newspaper state. They printed a map listing the locations of where rifles, shotguns, and pistols were stored. The Firearms Registry was directed by Police Minister Paul Papalia to give this information to the media, who released it on the front page of the newspaper, saying a gun on every corner. That was the headline. They were whipping up a fear campaign to make people and the community scared about the number of legally held firearms that we had in the community. There's been no issues with gun crime in this state, minimal levels of gun crime, and the crime that we do have is always linked to bikies and drug wars. That's what happens in here in this state. So the government of the day, with the absolute majority, said we've got our new agenda for firearms. We'll scare people into thinking that the licensed person who owns 10, 20, 30, 50 guns is the one to be scared of. That's what they went out, and that's how they told the public that we are suddenly an issue, despite the evidence and the statistics not backing it up. So it was just an onslaught from there. We were attacked in the media. We were smeared in the media. There were stories about guns printed next to bikies using guns. It was honestly one of the biggest propaganda machines I have ever witnessed in my 15 years working in media and politics. So that was back in March 2022. I ran for the Senate at that election because I was disgusted. I ran on a Give Gun Owners a Fair Go, and I just tried to be a voice for shooters in WA. That's all history. Fast forward to March 2025, we are now staring down the barrel of the limits on the number of private property we can own, another gun confiscation program without compensation because they've put things in the regulations that were released before Christmas, and now people are scrambling because they have firearms that is not worth any monetary value because the government has said so. So people are sitting there with collections and thousands of dollars of firearms that is worthless because of the state's laws, and people are genuinely concerned about what are we going to do. Jack, I know that's a bit of a long story, but do you think that this has been the agenda of the Labor government since they won that landslide election? And do you think they have been disingenuous with the people of Western Australia in what they're trying to achieve? Because they've used fear campaigns, they've used misinformation, they're calling lever action semi-autos in the media. What is your view of the Labor government, and why do you think they are doing this to us?
Look, firearms are an easy target. We've got the media, which reports here. Now, anyone who's watching from the United States would be surprised that every time you guys have a shooting, we end up with it in our news. We've had shootings in the United States on the front page of the West Australian saying a school shooting or mass shooting and, all of these things. And it's not until you get to, the actual story that you find out it's not in Australia. So they have been gearing this up, and the media has been gearing this up for quite a long time. We need to remember that this didn't actually only start in 21. The Law Reform Commission Project 105, which was the largest ever, that had greatest response ever in Australia, was completed in 2016. We had a Labor government in 2017. Now, they could have enacted a whole suite of changes, 156 recommendations, right then and there. And they were, in principle, genuinely very good. It said there should be no limits on firearms. It said that primary producers and pest controllers should be allowed Category D firearms. Suppressors were in the report and saying we should have them. All of these things in there that we all agree with and think we should have, as well as it had stronger penalties for firearms offences, in particular for people who aren't licensed. They could have thrown those in, and it genuinely would have been the sort of thing that would have prevented the Floriat murders, the Motorplex shooting. Nah, that was going to happen. That would have happened with anything. So we actually have Labor inaction on firearms to blame for everything that we've got going on now. That they say, oh, this happened and Liberals didn't do this. They voted against changes that would have prevented these situations. But we've got goldfish for voters, and they've forgotten that the report's in red. They could have made changes then that would have been very good. It would have led the country. I mean, I always sit there and laugh and think about kangaroos that are bombed out on opium in Tasmania getting slammed by a semi-auto 308 because in Tasmania you're allowed cat Ds out of all states and territories. Why are they still allowed them? Why can't we have them? You know, I'm still baffled. But no, my taste for the Labor government has never been good. I know people are going to say, "Oh, shooters, fishers preferenced Labor in the last election." Yes, that's true. In a few seats, they did, and I can point to the eastern states and say they did a great job. They did a really good job of throwing us under the bus for their benefit. But Labor have constantly attacked not just firearms owners, but as a farmer, as a producer, they have attacked agriculture at every chance they have had. As someone who enjoys actually, when I get a chance, going to a beach, being able to throw a fishing line in or something, they're attacking that. They're putting in lockouts. My hometown, Esperance, they're about to put in the largest marine park in the world and ban everyone from being able to go fishing there, driving on the beaches that I grew up on. And it's all in just some bullshit idea that it's going to save the environment. And they keep on doing these things under the guise of saving the environment, public safety. It doesn't work. It people should sort of wake up to it and realize that it's just an excuse to charge us more taxes, penalize us for having opinions that are not in line with them. And yeah, it's truly a disappointment to see a government that ends up with absolute power using it for evil, not good. And so, yeah, they've missed the mark. None of this is actually going to make the public safer. In fact, it's going to lead more firearms underground. And then they're going to target those people and go, look, we've got these illegal firearms. And it was the one that they always used to bring in was the grey market firearms. So it's, someone's died in a deceased estate. It's not on a registry, and you're going, well, after 1996, it's better not to tell anyone about Granddad's rifle. We'll just make sure we keep that around. Those things aren't doing any harm to anyone. Most of the time, it's something brought back from the war, and it is genuinely something that's collectible. And now, in this act, they're commanding people that you've got to take the rifle that defended the nation and destroy it. It's sad. It's sad to see. They're destroying our heritage in every single way. And Australia has got a rich heritage of survival and living off the land, some of the harshest conditions in the world, and we've thrived. And we've done it with a fishing rod and a firearm. So, yeah, it's sad to see, but there's a massive disconnect now between people in the cities where there's massive centralisation. They're pushing everyone into there, putting in massive tax benefits for living FIFO, and people don't see what is happening. Out here in the regions, we've got more dangerous roads than firearms.
Let's talk about destroying culture and heritage. So they did have a gun confiscation program. They call it a buyback. Let's be very clear. You cannot buy back something you never owned in the first place. It was confiscation. And the confiscation program that they brought out here in WA, they judged the value of the firearm based on when it was registered. If it was registered less than 6 years in the state, rifle, pistol, or shotgun, it was deemed a certain value. If it was over 6 years in terms of when it was registered in WA, it was a different value. They did not offer compensation based on market value like they did back in 1996, because there is a clause in the Australian Constitution that says if the Commonwealth Government confiscate private property from the people of Australia, they have to pay fair market price. That is a clause in the Constitution. When it comes to the state governments, they do not have to do that. So Labor devised this scheme, this table of how much the state would pay, taxpayers' money, by the way, in a cost of living crisis. They thought it was a good idea to buy guns off of peaceful people just to get less legally owned guns off the street, because their justification, it makes people safer. This is the mentality of the government that we have in WA. So they had that gun confiscation program, and like Jack said, they released the regulations just before Christmas, 2 days before Christmas. I remember because I did a live stream with Aussie Reviews in Queensland, who was messaging me going, "Have you seen this, Kate?" And we were reading it together because we don't have a life. This consumes us. And we were just horrified at what the government had put out after they closed the confiscation or buyback scheme. And now we are at the point that people own firearms that are suddenly banned by the state, and there's confusion going around. The police minister is saying that he told the shooting organisations that this was going to happen, so it's up to them to communicate it. People are getting letters from Waypol in the post saying this push-button release firearm is now legal. You have to dispose of it for no compensation. This is the situation. The boot of the state is on our neck. So this is a situation we have in WA with private property that we have paid big money for. Some people, that's their whole passion. I know my dad has a lot of firearms that he collects because that's his passion. You are allowed to have your interests. Some people collect stamps, some people collect firearms. We're all different. As long as we're not hurting anybody else, we should be allowed to do that and not punished by the state, who's come up with their own ideology and says this is no longer okay. So we are now looking at a situation in WA. There are people who have firearms that are suddenly banned. They can't get fair market price because the confiscation scheme is closed. The gun shops don't want to hear about them. The gun shops very certainly do not want anything to do with WA. I've spoken to a few of them over there, and they said, why would we bother? We don't want to touch it. So, Jack, have you been getting a lot of messages from people about these confiscation letters? And as you are running for the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party at this election, you are number 4 on the ticket, so a bit far down, but who knows? Hopefully we might have a big shooting wave and you could get up. What is the policy of the Shooters and Fishers Farmers Party about these confiscation letters? Would you reopen the buyback scheme? Would you be fighting it? What is your solution, and what do you personally think about the way that Labor has gone about this whole process?
Well, one of the things you need to look at and understand where the problems really lie in not the written intent of the Act, but the demonstrated intent of the Act, is how they are basing things on KPIs, so key point indicators. And so they've put out a goal of reducing the number of firearms privately held by 55,000, somewhere in that vicinity. That methodology does not work when you start introducing KPIs for things like crime. And so a good thing, again, it's the same minister. Kalgoorlie has got an issue with crime. Carnarvon has got an issue with crime. And they started issuing KPIs to the sergeants in charge, saying, we want you to reduce the arrests by this much and you'll get a bonus. And so what happens there? Well, it gets pushed down and people don't get arrested for crimes. They just get a slap on the wrist and told, please don't do that again. And what has that done? Well, hang on a second. Now we've got more crime than ever. And we've got less police wanting to serve. We've got record numbers of police leaving the force, because in Western Australia it's a force, because they cannot perform their job in improving public safety. So on one hand, we've got a minister who's quoting public safety as the target, and then you've got the reduction, and we've got police leaving because they cannot, provide the service of enhancing public safety. So it's a bit of a quandary. This whole KPI situation has really led to this complete and utter screw up in design of legislation and enacting it, and then also how it actually works in the real world. So when we come into the lever release situation and the prohibited firearms and this idea of, what as a party would we do? Well, I can tell you, if we get a couple of people up, the inaugural speeches are definitely going to be worth listening to, because the gloves are going to come off in regards to this. But there is no possible reason for the firearms that are known as lever release, or the rapid release firearms, as they're trying to call them, for public safety. People can keep them. Like, as a party, we keep them. Hell, like, we would sit there and we just go, we're sorry that we couldn't stop this from happening because we had no voice in Parliament. We are sorry that we couldn't, get them to see reason. We're sorry that they wouldn't listen to the public or one of the largest petitions ever tabled in Western Australia. We would just be saying that we are sorry, and we are going to get it back, get our firearms back. And hell, if I had some control over the budget, I'd be turning around and going, this whole, let's give someone $750, to make sure that you vote for us again, Labor. I'd be turning around and going, that's not happening. Every firearm owner who had their firearm taken off them is going to get their firearm back if we can, and you're going to get some money in your pocket to, sort yourself out because of the inconvenience. Just like they, grab a kid, knock him into the bloody court, and then, they get given $250 and told not to shoplift again. Well, if that works for that, well, how about we give the money back to our firearms owners? Because it's a joke. And really, people need to look at where the money for this buyback scheme came from, and they just robbed the last of the royalties for regions funding. So they just, again, punch in the guts to those out in the rural areas. We need that money for fixing our roads. We need it for our medical services. We need it to be able to entice teachers. Make sure that there's housing for teachers out here, housing for the police out here, so that we don't have the crime problems that we have in these regional areas. And they just went, no. We're just going to throw this money from that little kitty and jab it into this, buyback, and we're going to spend it on a complicated computer system to monitor the movements of firearms owners that we can't actually use yet. So that they've done some bad things to the budget. They're lying about how much money there actually is, and I think that they are scared of someone else getting in there, opening the books, doing an audit, and finding out how much they've screwed everyone over. But as a state, we should not be broke. So, no, as a party, we want to repeal the Firearms Act, and we would be bringing in a whole load of the recommendations from the 1973 review, so the Project 105, the 2016 report, and either stabbing that hard into the new act, or making sure that the 73, the original act, is tidied up, tightened, and you get rid of the crap like the property letters out of it, and bring back in the semi-autos for the pest controllers, because, to be honest, it's seeming more and more like the state government want to make sure that they're the ones in control of feral animal control. They want to make the producers pay for it. They're putting in new biosecurity levies, everything, and stop other people from contributing, because we know that the recreational shooters, and I'm going to call them the assistive shooters, people who come out and help farmers and producers, they they do a lot for conservation and the protection of wildlife. Meanwhile, we've got a state government who are sitting there saying, to conserve wildlife, what we do is we just lock it up and don't let anyone in there. We just lock it up and hope for the best. Now, we did have someone ask a question that I actually thought was interesting.
Oh, yes, sorry, I'm bad at checking through the questions. I did just want to ask quickly while we're on the topic of shooters, fishers, and farmers policy. When you have Stuart Austell, who's your number one candidate, and full disclosure, I was going to have him on my show tonight, but he wanted to do it in person. I didn't want to invite him to my dive Airbnb. I was trying to do it at Lone Ranges where I shoot, but it's been a very busy time for me, so I couldn't get him on. But I've got Jack on instead. I did want to ask, I have interviewed quite a few of the candidates, including Legalised Cannabis Party, the Liberal Party's Nick Goran. I've spoken to the Christians Party as well. The Rod Caddy's from One Nation too. I've had a phone call or two with him. All of the minor parties that I've spoken to, including the Libertarian Party, by the way, are promising a full review of the Firearms Act if they are elected. So there could be, after the election on Saturday, a situation where there are quite a number of minor party crossbench people in the upper house of Western Australia, and they can all get together and say, we don't want to go ahead with these laws, but we have to send it to a review. My concern with this is we do not want to wait 4 years for the Parliament to review laws that we were going to be living under from the 31st of March. This is the timeline here. We are getting very close to the wire. And there's been a lot of talk online. I'm sure you're getting a lot of messages too about what are the shooting organisations doing? Where's the legal action? I've taken on that battle of legal action because it's the least I can do, even though I have no skin in the game. I'm not a firearm owner in WA. I transferred my firearms out of here when I hit the road last year. I had to do it, but I still care. I care very deeply about my home state. So I'm trying to get that advice from a King's Council, especially in relation to private property limits. They think that that's illegal. Basically, there's concerns about the storage requirements. 10 mil safes, 10 mil safes. There's a shortage of that level of safe in Australia. So people will not be able to comply from the 31st of March because the gun shops don't have enough safes to sell to people. So suddenly you're a criminal because you can't adhere to these new laws that we only found out late in the game. I want to get this before a court. That's what I'm doing at the moment. I respect the fact that, Jack, you're fighting in a lot of different battles, and one of them is the Parliament of Western Australia. Are the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party committed to a review of the Firearms Act? And are you concerned that that will just take too long and people will be made criminals on the 31st of March and we don't have any other option? Can we wait 4 years for the Parliament to do the job that they're meant to do?
The main thing to look at, history, we can learn a lot from that. Every other state, when they've gone through their firearms reviews, it's taken them 4 or 5 years to implement the changes. And we've got a government here that expects it to happen like that. I mean, hell, if we held them to account on some of their other promises about, infrastructure and, any of the commitments that they've made, if we expected them to operate in that timely fashion, they'd tell us, whoa, slow down, hold up. Like, you've got to give us time to manage, prepare, and get everything ready. But when it's them dictating to us that we should comply or be unlicensed in a matter of 28 days, is that not a little bit unfair? So the idea of going through and doing a review of the entire act is a joke, because we've already done the review. We've had the review sitting on the damn table for over 5 years. That review, and that was agreed upon by so many people. So I would say that the best thing that we can do is basically put pause on the act. Just go, nah, sorry guys, that shit's out the window. That can sit over there. And until it's sorted out, until the proper consultation, genuine consultation, instead of sit you down in a room and we'll tell you what you think. And if you don't agree, well, you're kicked out of the meeting. And that did happen in some of the early conversations that someone disagreed and they were asked to leave the consultation group. You go, good work, guys. That's democracy right there. Disagree and get out. So we would be pushing the metaphorical uphill to manage to achieve what we would like to see, which is fall back to the act that actually was in operation and is manageable, and then make sure that cool. Review your 2024 act. Make sure that you have these like recommendations, whatever. That don't rewrite the whole thing. Just fall back to the 1973 Act, enact the 156 recommendations with consultation, and that's going to have a fine transition period all the way through it, because it's going to be small piece by small piece by small piece, and it's going to allow people to operate more freely and in a fairer manner than what they are proposing at the moment. I mean, it's completely unfair the way that they're approaching this. It's unmanageable. Licensing can't even keep up with it, and the changes to the regulations that they're making nigh on daily. So, yeah, it's we'd be we'd like to say that we'll get rid of it completely and bring in the recommendations, because consultation's been done. That's going to be a slow process, and what we have is a genuine problem where we might end up almost with a hung parliament, and this is what they're relying on. Push through as much shit legislation as you can, make a hung parliament so nothing can change, get to the next election, and you sit there and you scream at the others and say it's because of them that nothing changed. It's because of them during the last 4 years. Everyone has suffered of this poor legislation. If we had had just 4 more years, we would have listened to you, and people will believe it. And at what stage has Labor ever listened to the people? We had Roger Cook turn around and say it exactly as we will put Labor first, not the people. Not the people at all. And something that I've always been strong with in the Shooters, Fishers, Farmers Party is you need to be able to disagree with everyone else in the room. Like, we can all sit there in a committee meeting in amongst candidates and have a chat, and someone can disagree and stand up and be confident that we will listen, and we're going to go, well, hang on a second, that's a good point. Maybe I was being a little bit too extreme in regards to, say, what you should be allowed to do to defend your own property or your own equipment. Like, that it's a real threat. So, yeah, we're going to be stuck in a situation, unfortunately, I feel, that we're going to have a stalemate in Parliament that's just going to hurt everyday Australians and only benefit the Labor Party, who are making money left, right, and centre out of this complete joke of a government they've been running. And they're going to be able to sit there and scream and say the other guys didn't do it as well as we did. And well, that's the difference between capitalism and communism. Really, one lot turns around and says you can do it for yourself, and the other says you can only trust us. So, yeah, it's I try to be optimistic and hope that we'd get enough people in, and me being number 4 on the ticket, it's almost a bait, for everyone voting above the line. You want Jack in, vote harder, as David said. Yeah, it'll be a challenge, but we would like to push in some real change. And the biggest part of Shooters Fishers is that it's not that you as a member, as a sitting member, serve the party. It's you serve your constituents first, because too often we are seeing party priorities taking precedence to the people's priorities, the things that are actually needed for the community. We've got local members who are not voting in the interest of local people, and that's what's hurting. But that's where the big parties are dangerous because yes, Labor have a thing that if you vote against us, yeah, you're shafted, or you get back into the back rooms and they're not very happy with you. You get thrown onto the back bench. The Liberals do it. The Nationals, they'll do it. Um, and I think that the biggest problem we have is this entire big party corporations. Um, they are operating in only their interest, not the people's interest, and that's why the smaller parties, the independents, the people who are fighting hard are doing it for the people. You end up with people like myself who, you know, really, I've gotten to a point where it is, well, there's not enough people standing up. If no one's standing up, no one gets to have a say, and my voice isn't being heard. So I'll stand up and I'll listen to as many people as I can because I don't know everything about everything. How can I know every single issue that's going on in the fishing sector? I'm in the desert. But what I can do is I can listen to people in that sector. And that's probably what isn't happening a lot in Parliament today is they're not listening to the people, they're listening to the lobbyists. And the lobbyists are the ones who can stroll on in and go, yeah, mate, let's go for a pint in Parliament House, get you all liquored up, and you go in and you half cut, and then you're voting in favour of the dude that spent a few $100 on wine for you, and that really comes back to my whole thing that I ran on last election, which was ban booze in Parliament. We won't have another Brittany Higgins. Um, you know, how many of those are occurring? So, sorry if that went a little.
No, that's fun. It's free speech platform. You can say anything you like. That's what I'm about. I will get to questions at the end of the show, but I just wanted to ask you something else that we've touched on a little bit tonight, but I really wanted to get your opinion on this. You've talked about how Labor is not listening to the people. Yet when you pick up the Western Australian newspaper, or the Wake Australian newspaper, I call it because that's all it's worth for, it says in there, we've consulted with the people, we've had meetings here, we've put out discussion papers, we've listened to the people, we've had meetings with the WA Firearms Community Alliance, we talk to Fitzy and Steelo all the time, they know what's going on, you are being consulted. Do you think that that is genuine, that they have consulted the people? Because I remember when that discussion paper came out about the firearm laws a couple of years ago now. I wrote an extensive paper. I went through it. I'm sure you did too. A lot of people went through it, and we put in our submissions. A few weeks later, the exact same law came out with zero changes. Absolutely none. And they called that, the Labor Party of WA called that consulting with the people. It's not really genuine to say you're consulting with the people and then you don't listen to what they say. I don't think that's the accurate description of the word. You have been involved in consultation as a farmer. You've also been involved from the shooting side. Do you think Labor has listened to you at all, or do you think they're only listening to specific people? And by specific, I mean the police, who have been very heavy-handed in writing the laws. Do you think we have a situation now in this great state of WA, but my home, your home, it's the best place in Australia if you're listening from overseas. Do you think we have a situation now in WA where the government does not listen to the people and they serve their own factions, their own ideology, their own agenda, the interests of their donors, the interests of their mate, and the people are worse for it?
They're beholden to the donor. Um, that they will do what the donor tells them because they rely on that to be able to employ a whole suite of young, indoctrinated people who then end up loyal to the party and only ever live an entire life inside the party machine without any real world experience. And then they end up as the politicians, and they've learnt that what you do is you listen to the lobbyist and you employ the young person and you give them only what you want them to know. And I have a good friend who was a sitting member for the Liberal Party, And he said the best thing that ever happened was he got voted out because he ended up he said, you just end up, you're in that little room, and they only give you the report that suits the party and the report that suits the aides and the advisors. And one of the things that we need to make sure that we are clear on in regards to this consultation, and that they're only listening to, say, the police on it. When we say the police, we are referring to the police brass, because there are a lot of police who are not happy with this situation, because what it's doing is breaking down the community relationships. You've gone from going into a pub to nah, nah, go away. Like, you guys represent everything, um, everything that I don't want. You represent this. You're becoming a militant arm of the Labor Party rather than a service that is there to basically protect and ensure that everything is ticking along smoothly and in a cordial fashion. So we need to look at how these decisions and these political police, they might come out eventually as an actual suite. The political driven police are hurting the police officers on the front line. They are hurting them, and that's why they are leaving. So, yeah, they might be listening to the politicians with their, consultations, and I love that consultation that we had with the firearms. No response, nothing, no acknowledgement, and no change or input. And I think one of the best is probably with the consultations with the primary producer groups, because the primary producer group, so the WA Farmers Federation, I'm a member of that, turned around and I had a chat and they said, no, we did consult with our members and we asked. I said, well, I didn't say that at all. And then when I met with one of the PGA reps, I said, look, if you're not going to let me get involved in these consultation meetings and get in there and actually be someone who's used shit with their hands, does it daily, understands both perspectives with firearms, how they can be used for good or evil. Please, for the love of God, advocate for us not to have further restrictions. Tell them that we are responsible, we are doing a job, we are a safe community, and we need to have access to more tools. And the the group go forward, they go into their consultation, they get told to sit down, shut up, and agree with them. And for the minister and the group to turn around and say, we never heard anyone, no one ever said to us that primary producers need Cat Ds. No one ever said that professional shooters and shooters in general need suppressors. And no one said that there needs to be some changes to the handguns that primary producers can have. And you sit there and you go, well, this, were your ears painted on? Did you not read the email? Like, what is going on? And I think you're right. They just they say they've consulted, they say that they've asked people, and they will only ever pick out the little bits. I mean, hell, I got soundbited by the ABC when it came to the property letters. And pretty much about 10 minutes after they put their article out, I put the entire transcript up saying, this is what I actually said. And they don't interview me anymore because when they say I'm recording, I say I do too. And I've been told in any of the interviews with them that I have to declare all of my affiliations with shooting organisations, political organisations, any of that stuff. And I challenge them back with, well, can your producer declare their affiliations and their associations and political allegiances? And the conversation ends. So, this is how far this faux consultation and selective, you know, experts are coming in. And that's why things like this, having a free media, like a social media where we can jump in front of the camera and we can be in front of thousands of people of our generation and tell them exactly how it is and what is going on. And, the media won't touch it. They're too happy in their position of power and donation to the parties that they won't publish and they won't acknowledge what we are saying, even if we are saying something that is true and correct and from real world experience, where we have politicians who I've invited out to come and see the problems that we have, to see the reality of it, who say, no, we won't, we don't feel safe out there. And I sit there and sort of am baffled. I've met with the damn Prime Minister. I've gone and had a stark conversation with the fellow. I have a security clearance, which means that I'm not deemed to be a threat to society. But they don't feel safe out here. And really, that comes to the inspiration for why I started filming of the shooting that I do. And this was back in 2019 when I called the ag department and said, I need, some of your helicopters and I need some firearms up here to get this job done. And they said, oh, no. Look, you can't possibly be shooting 600 camels a day. Like those numbers just don't exist. And I went, well, that's funny because right here on this memory card, I've got video of it going on, and I've got my pregnant wife sitting there shooting as well. And then they were thrown completely off kilter by that. And I had to go to them to show it to them. And then nothing changed. I mean, in fact, something did change. Lana McTiernan did turn around and go, well, yep, there's a real problem. It's been demonstrated. We can do some emergency funding to go sort this out. But unfortunately, government agencies work so slowly that I'd killed them all by the time they got there. And that took them 3 months to mobilise because they've got to do their performance safety report. They're not allowed to work over 40 degrees. The shooter isn't allowed to be on the trigger for more than 3 hours at a time. They can't do more than 6 hours in a day. Poor damn pilot, he's allowed to do 12. But this is where the private enterprise wins every time because we can mobilise in hours. I've called up my mates from Perth and they're here within 18 hours, ready to start pulling the trigger. Whereas the government goes, oh, hang on a second, we've got to work out, and all of these silly parts. So it's that they are so out of touch with reality and the problems, and acknowledging that there is an area beyond Perth. And I always liked it when I was living over east, that when I said I am from WA, they're like, oh, so you're from Perth. There is a little bit more than just Perth. So yeah, this whole idea of the government will sort out the problem, they've never been able to do it. They've never been able to achieve it. And it's the people that are the ones that can actually make a change and make things work. So yeah, it's disappointing that the government, who are made up of people like us, who have been elected by the people, don't know what reality is. And I think the biggest part is that they lack the education. And it's not some university degree. It's education is from the real world and doing it, seeing it, and even just putting your feet on the ground and feeling it. So yeah, they should spend more on their travel budget and go meet the people who they're affecting and impacting, but they're too scared apparently. And you have to really wonder, why are they so scared of these people who have never done anything violent? Like that, we're talking about farmers, we're talking about recreational shooters, we're talking about guys who can do some wicked shooting on a range. Um, what what threat are we to them? Like what is it that they're doing? Like you can't help but be really, really suspicious of what else is happening, that they are so scared of ordinary people that they won't meet with them. So
Mm.
yeah, that's consultation, is sitting there and listening to people and not just nodding and then disappearing. You need
Mm.
politicians that will interrogate ideas. They'll challenge you. You don't want a politician to just say, yes, Jack, yes, Kate. You want someone to say, well, can you explain why you need a semi automatic? Can you explain why you want more than 10 firearms? And most of the time, people will say, well, yeah, I've got a 223 for shooting at night, 223 during the day. That's two. I've got a 22 for rabbits. The 223 is for foxes, a roo. But if the roo is a little bit further out, well, I'll use my 308. Why do you have a 300 Win Mag? I have a 300 Win Mag, well, because I want to. Um, and if I've got someone new shooting and they're going to be shooting a camel, I'm going to have something that I can hit it out at a reasonable distance if they've clipped it. Because despite how much people love to see me run and sweat on those rocks and everything, um, I'd prefer not to be doing that.
Mm.
So sorry if that went into
No,
again. I'm good at this stuff.
yeah, no, it's good to have a good chat. I knew that you would be great on my show. I'll just ask you one more question from myself before I throw to. We've got a lot of questions in the chat. I will get to. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Kate Fairtonell, and this is Jack Carmody. He is running number 4 for the Shooters Fishers Farmers Party in Western Australia. The election is this weekend, the 8th of March. Don't forget to vote if you're in this great state. I just wanted to ask you, Jack. I saw a video that you put up today, and you were saying that you've had a few people contact you and say, aren't you scared about speaking out? Aren't you scared that you're going to make yourself a target of the police, of the state? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this, Jack? Why are you standing up against all this injustice? Why are you making yourself a target? You've got a beautiful wife, beautiful family, beautiful land. The world is your oyster. And yet I see you every day on social media posting, talking honestly and openly and calling out things that the government is doing in this state. Why do you do it? And are you afraid of backlash?
I've been to some bad countries, and I've seen bad things in bad countries, bad things in good countries. You know, countries that are amazing, um, absolutely ruined by politicians, bureaucracy, and corruption, and an abuse of the people and the natural resources. And it doesn't make sense that you have people starving in a country that used to provide food for an entire continent. And I I sit here and I go, well, someone needs to speak out and put things in a sensible manner, in a cool, calm, collected manner, for people to sort of realise that, you know, the impacts of these laws, these legislations, these poorly thought out things. And I have had it since I started the YouTube channel and started showing the other side of the work. I don't just shoot camels. I run cattle. I do a whole load of technology stuff. Um, you know, doing things in this sector that have never been done before. And I had been contacted a number of times from back then where people would say, "Don't show this." You know, they will come after you. They will, just keep it under the rug. Just do it and don't tell anyone. And I think that attitude is what has hurt so much of the industry both agriculture and in firearms, that the only media people are exposed to is the negative media of a school shooting in a cafe. Um, it's it's to like someone's just said, it's to show people the reality of it and the experience of it, so that they can understand. Get in get in my shoes, see what it's like, see what I experienced, and see the struggles, the challenges, the opportunities. I mean, hell, it's not all a fight and negativity here. It's good fun, but I've I feel a moral obligation to Australia and to Australians that I speak up against some of these things that people are scared to speak about for fear of political and punitive attacks. And it's the fear and people being driven by that fear that they're governed by. And I don't want to see that happen in our country. Like, I don't want people to be scared to say what needs to be said. It comes right back to this idea of politically correct and how that's actually a term from Soviet Russia, where it was, yes, what you're saying may be correct, but it's not politically correct. And if you said something that was not politically correct and was the truth, you would end up in the gulag. And I don't want to see us in a virtual gulag of our own making. You don't have to physically be in chains to be punished and to be incarcerated. You can be incarcerated in your own thoughts by fear that men in black are going to kick in your door. And I feel strongly about the fact that Australia should be a free nation. We should be free people. We should be allowed to live and do what we want without harming others. And I have a very strong interest in defence, national security, and everything, and the protection of Australia as a state, as an idea. And I fear that some of these oppressive laws and everything are really setting us up to just be submissive to whomever has the strongest military in our region and can come in and go, you know what, we're going to come in and take it because we know we can grow food there and we know that there's water there and we can, feed our country and our people. These guys are doing nothing with it. We'll take it. We'll do it. And, this goes all the way through to all of the heritage, like, colonial heritage and also Aboriginal heritage. They aren't going to care at all about cave paintings that are, a few thousand years old. They ain't going to care about the spiritual connection to the land that people feel. And you don't have to be an Aboriginal Australian to have a connection to the land, to the country, in a spiritual level. And you don't have to be born in Australia to feel that connection. Australia, in one way, is an idea. So we need to protect that idea in ourselves at home so that we will have enough pride in Australia for our generation and the generations after us that they will defend it. They will defend our idea and they will defend our legacy. And it's something worth having as a free nation. And yeah, I stand up and I will make the noise about it because I fear that people have been beaten down into a position that they aren't going to speak out about it. And the next thing that they take away is going to hurt more people. But because we didn't speak up before and everyone sits there and says, you guys gave up your guns in 1996. And in a way, it was the right thing to do. There's not many people that I talk to who say, oh gosh, it was a great idea that I gave in my semi-auto 12 gauge. That not many people at all. And they go, we thought that it would, make change and that we would be, um, you know, making sure that we'd still be able to perform our roles in society. and still enjoy our hobbies and our sports and our commitment to conservation, because a lot of shooters are doing conservation. And that trust has been abused from that moment onwards. And they started this rhetoric of doing the right thing during COVID, and it was a great situation for them to start pushing through this idea, um, that for public safety. And people like went through some absolutely abhorrent treatment here in Australia in the idea of public safety, and not many people really died from COVID. Like it really wasn't that bad. I've had hangovers that were worse than COVID. I had an injection that was worse than actually getting COVID. I had friends end up in hospital because of it. I know more people that ended up in hospital from the injection than from COVID itself. And that people have still been guiled into this idea that that was good and it was protecting us, and taking away firearms is protecting us. But there's been nothing with firearms that has been a threat to the public. And you say that, and then the next thing you know, we're going to have someone that goes off and pops a few rounds. And it could be, put the tin hat on for that, or it could be someone who's just literally been pushed into the corner so far, so hard. They're worried that they're not going to be able to keep on performing their role in society. And it's sad to see it, and it's sad to see people get pushed that far. And it's not the sort of thing that you want. And it's why we need to really speak up, try to not convince people. You don't try to convince people. You just let them live your experience by telling the story. And you need to tell the story for them to understand. And the more people that start to understand, the more informed decisions we're going to have from our people in making choices when they get to the point where they are voting for someone that's going to be making decisions, hopefully, for the benefit of their nation and their state and their life, rather than this idea of vote for us and we'll keep you safe by, wrapping you up in bubble wrap and not letting you do anything. Because, I mean, hell, the question is, what next in the idea of public safety? I mean, I'm drinking zero alcohol beer. The biggest thing that I do enjoy normal beer and a scotch and a good red wine. But sorry, the South Australian reds, the better ones from the Limestone Coast down in Clare. But how far are we going to go with not looking after? Sorry, how far are we going to let them take it in having the state look after us? Because soon it'll be, well, you aren't allowed to eat this, you aren't allowed to eat that, you can't have alcohol. And I think, yep, there's no problem at all in drinking your zero alcohol and low alcohol beers. But I can tell you what, it is the biggest damn shame that these zero alcohol beers cost more than Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola is going to do more damage to our health system. And we see it in our young Indigenous, how much damage is being done by Coca-Cola. And, how come they can keep pumping that out into kids? How come zero alcohol beer is not anything? They built the damn pyramids on low strength alcohol beer. That just tells you how innovative people can be when they've had a couple of drinks and they go, you know what we should do? Build a giant triangle in the middle of the desert. But it's the question really is, how far are we willing to let them take it? And it's just each one, each thing that they push it to the next level. We're going to stop you from being able to travel across your state. We're going to stop you from traveling inside of your country in your safety. We're going to stop people from having firearms. No more V8s. no more motorbikes, no more anything. So, yep. Sorry, everyone. I went for another rant.
This is why I messaged you the other day and said we will lead the peaceful revolution of West Australia. You are a statesman, Jack Carmody. You are a leader. You're exactly what this state and this country needs. And I look up to you so much. You've inspired me to be more ballsy. I know we're on a list together. I know we're going to end up in Cairns, but we would not let it come to that in our beautiful state of WA. Jack is number 4 on the upper house ticket for Shooters and Fishers Farmers Party. Stuart Austell is the number 1 candidate. If you like what Jack's saying, you will love what Stuart Austell has to say. Please, 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 if you're in WA voting at the election this weekend, have a look at Shooters, Fishers, Farmers Party. They are the calibre of Jack Carmody. This is exactly what we need in this beautiful state. He's a bloody legend, and I know one day, you will be leading this independent WA. Now, let's get to some questions because I've been ignoring everybody and just infatuated with what you've had to say. It's been a great chat tonight. Thanks for joining me last minute. Is there any questions that you saw that you want to answer? I did see a comment from someone. Sergeant Sirius said, a relative who lives in WA is in the process of sending me his rifles, which are World War II rifles, because he received a confiscation letter and he is on the East Coast. We, the people, have been disarmed. We can no longer defend ourselves or our country. And Sergeant Sirius, I'm glad that your relative in WA is sending those heirloom firearms to you, because if you saw what they did here with all the guns they confiscated, Jack, do you remember this? On September 11, the government of WA, all the guns that were handed back, they took out to the desert and they blew them up. Did you see that? That's what they did with those guns that were handed in. We have to talk about that quickly.
Yep, I released a statement on that one, and
That's right. Yes, that's
it
right.
was
You
at
did.
the Water Point Pack Horse that I was at, so I remember that. And people might think I just sit there, you know, cruising around and just videoing myself. Happens a lot, but no, it's while I'm driving point to point, private property. So yes, I'm allowed to use my phone. I generally will get to a water point. I'll have an idea, and I'll go right. Okay, this is what I need to talk about. And sorry, I had to sort of sit there and go, come on, September 11, this isn't ideal. Maybe they should have used a little bit of jet fuel, because using a whole load of ANFO is not going to melt all those rifles up. But it was a pretty abhorrent act. And we've got to remember that this is a politician we have here who said that we have got an American style gun culture here in Western Australia developing, and we can't have this. And you sort of sit there and go,
If only we had the Second Amendment, Jack.
yep. And in one way, what is wrong with a culture that prides itself on its history and their ability? Like a lot of shooters from the US are hunters, and they go out and they collect the meat for their family, because you've got to, how much it costs to buy a tag over there. So they have a lot of respect for the animal, and then that whole process. And then for them to perform this media stunt of blowing up firearms on September 11 from our Minister for Veteran Affairs, of all things as well, I thought was a little bit, on the nose, and it was definitely pushing his whole anti-America agenda. But I always sit there and go, if he's so anti-America and everything, and I guess that's why they're so closely tied between the Labor Party and the Red group to our north. Um, you know, you are buying an awful lot of firearms and tactical equipment and vehicles from US contractors to put into our police force. And I sort of sit there and go, why have we got a hyper militarization of our police force? And I'm actually someone who believes that we should get rid of the TRG, because it breeds an elitism culture inside the police force, which is rather unhealthy. And yes, the folks in that group are very skilled and everything, but they are geared up and ward up for something that we don't have a problem with here. And you've got these very, very trained police officers in, you know, in their um, I was going to say counterterrorism role, but we have a counterterrorism unit here in Western Australia who are very experienced, a lot better trained and resourced, and probably should be able to step in to that role, as they had done in the past. But now we're seeing it that we've got police who are scared to enter a teenager's party, and so they call in the TRG. And you sort of go, right, is the problem the parties, or is the problem a growing fear from the police of the public? So I get a little bit concerned that maybe our fortitude of our officers is not quite up to par. I know some very good police officers. I know some very, very dedicated officers, and they have been politically railroaded because of some of their values, beliefs, and opinions. And yeah, I'm concerned about gearing up the TRG to such a high level. We shouldn't need it at all. We should have police officers that have a relationship with the community, and I don't know what it is that we've got happening somewhere that they've developed this level of paranoia of the public that a normal officer can't knock on the door and go, "Hey kids, can you just turn it down a bit, dial it up," like instead of barging in, kicking the doors in, running an MRAP or a bloody Bearcat in a suburban street. Um, yeah, I don't know what culture problem we have there, but I think we've got more of a culture problem there than in our shooting community. And yeah, I bring back to doing it on September 11 was not a good choice, but it sent a very strong message that the minister doesn't like the United States for some reason.
Yeah, and someone, King Kong or Kang Kong, I don't know, has said, anyone catch WA minister calling the US Vice President JD Vance a knob? That's who we have representing us. I think not. This is the kind of people we have here in WA. And just to touch on what you said about the culture of the WA police force, we now have in WA the police can stop and search you without a warrant, and that's happening in the party district of Northbridge. I received a video the other day from a guy who was lining up for a Euros, and he was stopped and searched for weapons, and that's, they have KPIs, like Jack was saying before. The police force now have KPIs on the number of stop and searches that they do. This culture has come from the police minister, Paul Papalia. That's the culture he's instilled in our police force, when it used to be a culture of helping out your community and you could approach a police officer and ask for directions. We do not have that culture in WA anymore. In the 4 years that I lived here, it's turned into a total police state. And I agree with you, Jack. We do not need that kind of culture here where it's the police militarizing against the people. I do have a question from Derek Kerr. Hey, Kate, are you nearly up to the amount you need for my legal action challenge? Yes, I am so close. I am that close that I have booked in meetings with my lawyers for Monday, the 10th of March, just after the election, because I have a sneaking suspicion Labor will be returned with a reduced minority in the lower house, which is where government is formed. But the upper house, I'm hoping we'll have Stuart Austell, maybe even Jack Carmody, even though he's down on the ticket. The upper house is where we really can have that balance of power and get things like a review of the Firearms Act through. And I am still going ahead with my legal action, even though I have no skin in the game here, but I need to do what I can for the people, like Jack is doing for the people in the fight. We're trying very hard. Another question that we've had, it's me, Glenn91. WA government has banned four-wheel drive on public land with $5,000 fine, which seems like it will restrict hunting on Crown land. Thoughts? Now, Jack, we've never had hunting on Crown land in WA. the new laws haven't changed that at all. We still can't hunt on Crown land. In South Australia, where I was born, my father shoots in national parks for SSAACWN. They have the contract, not that they get paid, but they go into national parks where I'm from and they shoot a lot of goats for free as a service to the community, not that they get the thanks that they deserve. So, Jack, just an update on hunting on Crown land in WA. It's still banned. That's the last I heard.
Yes, and as a party, we support hunting on Crown land, and I, even had the mad idea that we would be able to bring it in, and we'd be able to have it in a free ticket system, effectively. So, like that, you can get your tags or anything, but it's more of this is the zone that I'm going to be operating in, and like book it, and you go, right, cool. Well, that area is booked for that time. That's your AO. You're not going to come across anyone else shooting, so you've got a level of safety there, especially when you're out in Crown land. And for me, I've got bloody few hundred kilometres of Crown land out to my east until you hit the border, and I can say that I'm closer. Well, it's 300 kilometres difference between me to Perth and me to Alice. We're effectively we should be the territory. So no, we would strongly support Crown land hunting in a managed aspect, and I don't want to involve the DPLH because they want to ruin everything for everyone. But we could have a portal system where we can, book an area, go camp, shoot, hunt, enjoy, have minimal impact on the land. And I can tell you that the tracks and wheel marks from a four-wheel drive, yes, you can see them for a while, but they are doing less damage to the land than the feral animals are. And there's a positive in the environment that I am in, that when a vehicle drives over some virgin ground, it actually does a little bit of work on the soil, and that actually ends up being an area where seeds will form up and then they'll grow, so you get a little bit more growth. And you can actually see there's little strips throughout the desert of little grass growing, and that's a little seed bank. That's brilliant. It's growing, and you've whacked a bunch of camels, and hopefully what you've done is taken some back straps, thrown them in your angle, and you've done your bit for the nation, and you've got a whole load of nice free range, organic, chemical free meat that you can throw on the barbecue, turn into biltong. Like at the moment, I've got a back strap in the dehydrator drying some camel. So there's so many opportunities there for people to further that connection to the land in protecting it. And you're doing your part. Like the little picture up there that Dave wanted me to make sure was square. It's something to do with the camera because that's square to the roof. So that's confusing. But the horses up there, yep, cool. We've got heritage of horses and everything. Yeah, they're a pest. They're a problem. They do a lot of damage to the country. And when we look at the portal system where they wanted to get us to register our properties for property letters, then it's the pest types that people have. The department's analysis of this property when we bought it said that there was maybe 400 horses on the property. In the first 6 months, I shot 636 of those 400 horses. And we've taken out over 4,000, 4,500, I think was in our last one that we did. So, that you've got to be out there to see the problem. And this is where the conservation hunters and people getting out there into that country can go, hey, look, we have found bloody camels in the wrong, like in an area no one's seen them before. Now, yeah, we've whacked them, we've tidied them up. But that's eyes on country. That's eyes defending it. That's protecting it. That's getting out there and being in touch with it. And I can tell you that hunters out there who are out in the bush are seeing things that shouldn't be there. They're the ones who will spot the plantation. They're granted, eventually it's going to be legalized, but they're the ones that are going to see something that is going wrong and changing in the environment. And at the moment, because of the whole it's illegal to hunt on Crown land, no one gets told about it, and the problem develops. It gets worse. And it's sad to see here in Western Australia that there is no provision, no discussion of it from any of the other parties about bringing in the crownland hunting, but also the benefits environmentally that it can have. Like, again, don't just lock up an area and say no one can go in there, because that's where the pests will breed. Camels, out to the east, I'm consistently shooting hundreds of these things, and there's no improved waters out there. They are perfectly adapted to this environment, and I do my best to take them out. But they've got 400 kilometers of no interference, and that's a whole lot of country that people could be operating in, and getting away from Perth for the weekend, getting away from the coast, going out, experiencing the desert, the beauty of this country that our pioneers fell in love with, and they're going to bring something to the communities out here that isn't there at the moment. And you're going to get people driving out and going, gosh, that was a shit road. Like, that was terrible. And then they realize that that's a road that is keeping our nation going. That's a road that is bringing money into our economy. And because no one's complaining about it, it doesn't get fixed and people die. But if we get the people out here onto that crown land, I mean, hell, we've got crown land around the coast where we've got deer, pigs. You know, we, we could be in there. We could be doing something about it, and we wouldn't have to be all stealthy about it. And problems would be seen. So, yes, crown land hunting is on the list for the Shooters Fishers Farmers Party.
Absolutely. And Shooter Down Under has said, he's a regular listener of mine. Hello, Shooter Down Under. Prior to this, you needed the property letter to get the open license to participate in the conservation and wildlife programs on public land. How does the new laws affect this? Do you know, Jack, what's happening? Well, property letter system has been changed completely. How does this affect public land hunting? Well, we didn't have that in the first place, so I assume it's still status quo.
Well, that would apply to things like people who are part of the is it Deer Hunters Australia?
Oh, ADA. Yep.
ADA, that's the one. Sorry.
Yeah.
They can end up like in South Australia, as you were saying earlier, with some DBCA contract or permission to operate in a national park. The act itself, yeah, this is the bit people aren't going to like about this new property letter system, and I'll step further into it when we think about the tracking system on the licenses. So your property letter is only applicable to that one that you have. So I give you a letter, an authority to shoot on my property. Your firearm is only allowed to be used on that property.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to shoot on my mate's place, you'll have to get one from him. But then this is going to eat up the producer's number of authorities that they can give out. And it's still unclear, that system, about it, how many you're allowed. I think they're talking about five authorities for 5,000 acres or something, and then they sort of stopped at that point. And you're like, well, hang on a second. If you've got someone who's got 1 million, and they're only allowed to give out 5 authorities, that doesn't quite work. Like, it's a long drive for my mates to come up here and go shooting, and they're, it is usually a group of 4 or 5 people. So is it going to be like a time period thing they were talking about, saying that a property letter only lasts from 7 to 150 days. Now, that part of it is now open to interpretation, and I'm speculating on this that I give you the authority for the week, and I can only give out 5 authorities for that week, and you can come up and you can shoot for those that your 7 days, and then after that you're not allowed to shoot up here unless I extend it. But I've got to register that through the portal and all of this. The one of the architects of this new act, Mr. Walker, had said that what he wanted to do is have point-to-point tracking in the application. So part of our licensing is going to be done through our phones, and they want to do it through the Safe WA, or I think it's the Safe WA app. So they're redeveloping the Safe WA app for your firearms license.
The same app that we used for the check-in during the pandemic? Is that the same one? Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And they wanted to enact point-to-point tracking on that. Like he said that it was his goal that we'd have point-to-point. So then they could track if you've gone to a property that you weren't authorised for, and then penalise you for it because, hey, you didn't get the authority for Joe's place. So they didn't quite get that one across the line, and they were a little bit au fait with their responses to the Honourable Louise Kingston, in regards to what ability the tracking would have. And in Hansard, if you look at the way that the question was answered, the answer that was given would be the type of answer I would give if I was going to say to someone that, no, we aren't going to do point-to-point tracking, we will do consistent tracking, but not, it's in the little brackets down there. So they could be reading between the lines that, no, they won't do point-to-point check-in on it, they want to track you the entire way, and then that was confirmed by Mr. Walker's statements. So it is a concern that you will lose all privacy, and it's basically written into the act that you have no right to privacy if you own a firearm. You give up your right to free speech, you give up your right to privacy, you give up your right to say no to a warrant. I mean, they say it's so that they can check and see if there are firearms in the car, and they can change the approach that the police have, but that's going a little bit too far, I believe. I don't think that's really great. So, yeah, that on that point about the conservation wildlife on public land, it would appear that you could have your firearm licensed, and then you'd have to get that permission from the landholder, or land manager, being the DBCA, DPLH, whichever an acronym you want to use on the day, to go and do that control program.
Yeah, so we're talking about WAPOL bureaucrats tracking the activities of volunteer pest controllers who are trying to help our farmers and volunteering their time on the weekend to come and help people like Jack, who own an enormous amount of property on this land. And there's been no issues, by the way. I just have to reiterate this fact. We are not the one causing the problems in this state with illegal firearms. There is a drug war here. This is a place that is known for issues with drug crime. That could be alleviated overnight if we decriminalise drugs, but that's a conversation for another day, and probably with my friends in the Legalised Cannabis Party. But this is what we're talking about in WA. The police and the man-hours spent tracking legal firearms owned by peaceful people doing a service to the community. This is where we are at here in WA. It's Orwellian stuff. I can't believe it. I love this state so much, and it breaks my heart to hear that this is where we're at. This is why we need to elect people like Jack from Shooters and Farmers and all the other minor parties who want to do the right thing by the people. I've had another question here from Peg's Place. He's called, I was told by police I could get 10 years jail for gel blaster toy guns because they look real in New South Wales. We have the same problem here in WA. Airsoft, which is a sport you run around and it's a military kind of style, but you shoot at people with gel blasters, air rifle gun, not air rifle, airsoft. It's different. The Honourable Aaron Stonehouse, who I used to work for, was a mad keen airsoft shooter. He wanted to legalise it. Australia is one of the only Western countries that ban sport because the firearms that they use look too much like real guns. Jack, what is your opinion on appearance laws? I know this is going to open a kettle of worms. Appearance laws are the worst laws on the books in this bloody country, but we have the same laws here. It's a federal level thing. Customs control that. Australian Border Force and the Australian Federal Police get to categorise guns based on how they look, not their action, which is how it should be. Appearance laws, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, if we put appearance laws in Northbridge, it could be interesting. And discriminatory. You know, the appearances can be very deceiving, is what we've all known. The whole premise of a firearm could be dangerous because it looks dangerous is just a complete and utter fallacy. I do not know who came up with this idea that because something's black, it's dangerous. I mean, maybe we're looking at a couple of racists that came up with this idea, but it's very frustrating to see it and to see it consistently. I know that my mates at Wedgetail, they're having trouble with licensing the MPR in New South Wales. We had it where we had firearms here in Western Australia that you could not have a they were calling it a barrel shroud. So your barrel couldn't have, a rail around the whole thing. So quad rails for those in the US. That they were actually having to cut the top of those off, and then someone pointed out that a 303 Enfield was all the way to the end, and having the barrel covered up was making it more dangerous. Is that like saying that a woman wearing a long dress makes her more dangerous because you don't know what's under there? I don't know. You could go on a whole different
It's a slippery
line.
slope.
Yeah, you could definitely, and especially in today's climate. But we need to remember not only about airsoft being illegal, which is great fun, so much fun, and I don't think there's much more, fun than being able to nail your mates with those. And just form function, all this. We need to remember that our esteemed minister did turn around and hold up a gel blast and say that they can be turned into a real firearm, but then didn't proceed to demonstrate how you could. And I think that, that's probably something they should do, is demonstrate. Please show us all how this will work. They're not the problem. There's people who have held up bloody servos and stuff with like even a bloody cap gun. It's the intent that's the problem, and I think that it's ridiculous to have an appearance law, because I can tell you that someone pointing a old muzzle loader at me is pretty intimidating, and that can kill you just as much as anything else. Might take them a little while longer to reload, but it's the motivation of the person, and we've seen it in Japan and China where you've had mass stabbings at train stations. And I can tell you that a knife scares me, and someone who is willing to plunge a blade into 30 or 40 people is a lot scarier. It's not exactly anything to do with the appearance of it that makes something more dangerous, because we've had this discussion, and that's even in the Law Reform Commission 105 that said that the appearance laws serve no purpose. And I tell you again, we are going straight back to, it is not the licensed firearms owners that are the problem. I can tell you, I'm scared of a Kraknikov. that's the thing that really is a concern, and the fact that we have got very porous international borders. We've had landings up in the Northern Territory of um, illegal fishermen, and they have brought monkeys, pigs, bloody chickens, all of these things, and set up little communities up in areas like Arnhem Land. And it's been the conservation shooters, that have found them. And you've got a border that is that porous. Well, things are going to get into this country. I mean, how do we get tons of cocaine in Australia? And there used to be a bit of a deal that you bought a few kilos of cocaine, we'd throw a gun in there with it. So it's it's getting into the country. Those legal firearms are getting in, and the problem isn't going to be solved by targeting funding from the public coffers into attacking and persecuting people who are willingly putting their name down on a list and saying, this is the firearm I want, this is what I want to use it for, and this is where I live. Here are photos of my safe. This is how secure the firearm is. It's going to be solved by making sure that our borders are patrolled regularly and strong. And you put in a big marine park and tell every Australian, nah, guys, you're not allowed to go there. The Northern Watch, the people who are out there fishing, see something, say something, you're going to go, well, that boat doesn't look okay. So now we're suddenly looking at these massive areas. We've got a foreign navy cruising our waters at the moment. You're kind of setting up a lot of spots that they could just plow on in unobserved, and that once they've got a football, well, they're gonna win. So we don't need to prioritise by looking in at our people. We should be looking at how we can protect our people.
And something my dear friend Bob Catter set up in Queensland when I was there very briefly last year. He is so passionate about Australians. He said Australian boys, but I think it should be extended to the ladies too if they want to, that we should know how to handle a firearm like they do in Switzerland. They have all of their civilian population know how to use a firearm in the event that a nation is invaded. And we've got the Chinese warships circling at the moment. I don't know what they're doing. I asked my ex-husband in the Navy, can he tell me? And he won't tell me. But we have to be prepared because this is the times that we live in. So, Jack, I agree with you. The national security of our nation is paramount. And how can we defend our nation when our military is not big enough and then we are the ones being disarmed? So great point. A comment from Peter Koronika. Thanks, Kate and Jack, for your efforts with the love heart. I hope you chase Mark and Sam for the next one. Mark and Sam, you've watched them before, I'm sure. Jack, I got to meet them. I went to the inaugural meeting of the Western Australian Council of Firearms Alliance, or whatever it's called, and he's very passionate. Check out Mark and Sam on YouTube. They do some great rants like Jack does. I'll see if they'll come on because they have some great thoughts. Another comment and question from Angus McCarthy. As someone who grew up in farming on multiple farms, I feel for you knowing the hardships you endure and the ones currently ahead of you. I have utmost respect for what you do and are currently doing. And thank you, Kate, for the unrelenting fight you consistently fight. You are both not alone in this. We are fighting for our voice with you. Doesn't that make you feel nice, Jack? It feels sometimes you get a lot of attacks, I get a lot of attacks, but we do have, when you have the people behind you, we don't have the support of any organisation. In fact, the organisations probably don't think that we should exist, but that's okay. You've got your turf, we've got ours. We are siding with the people. Sometimes it gets a bit hard, and I've spoken to you at length before on the phone about how hard this fight is, but you're doing it for the people. I can feel that, and I understand how hard it is, and Jack, you are a bloody legend. I just have to say it again. Let's have a look. Any other questions in here?
We've got a couple.
Oh, you've got some. You do the job for me. Thanks, Jack.
I saw one from Craig, but just...
Davo said, Jack, can you straighten the picture in the... I think it looks pretty straight. I thought I looked a bit crooked, but sorry, Davo.
Um, a final thought on the defence sort of situation
Yes, yes.
is that we've got some of our top strategic defence analysts who are saying that we should be training and getting the F-88, so the Steyr, the standard issue firearm for the Australian Defence Force, into the hands of our civilian population, so they're familiar with them. And then, yeah, we have that flip side of these other guys saying no guns for anyone, and you just go, well, okay, who do we side with here? So that's that final thought. So Craig asked, do WA people need a permit to bring our firearms to Queensland? Like Queensland need to enter our state with Queenslanders need to enter.
It's very hard to bring a gun into WA. I've got mates who shoot IPSC competition shooting, and it is so bloody hard to get a permit to come in here. I'm scared that that will be the next line of attack, is shutting down people who are travelling from across the border. And by the way, I just have to make this point. So the WA government is now saying that the people of Western Australia cannot be trusted to own more than 5 or 10 guns, depending on what discipline you shoot. But the people across the border in the NT and South Oz, where I was born, they are considered more responsible people, so they can own as many guns as they want, as long as they pass the justified reason. This is what WA people, I just want the people to understand this. Your government has now deemed that you are not as responsible as people in the rest of our beautiful country, because why? Because why? They have not justified this once. They have not listened to the consultation period. They have not listened to us. They have not listened to Jack. They have not listened to me. They have not listened to anybody. We are now in a position in WA where we have the most restrictive laws in the world in terms of responsible firearms ownership. And the question has to be, when you vote at the election on the 8th of March, do you think that is the role of the state that should determine that you are no longer a trustworthy person because they have deemed that these limits on private property should be the law? Jack, do you think that we should live in a state where we are governed like this? Do you think the people of Western Australia deserve to be treated like this? And you, as a landowner, as someone who has proven to be a responsible person, what is your message? And let's finish on this point. What is your message for the voters of Western Australia? And what would you like our home state to look like in 4 years' time?
Definitely not red. I feel that it is an insult to every firearms owner in Western Australia to say we don't trust you to have the firearms, and the idea of saying 5 is enough is just completely baffling. But from the other aspect, when we start to talk about veterans, but also current serving defence personnel as well, they in their private life are restricted to the same things and told that they aren't trustworthy. They're trustworthy to go and be sent to other parts of the world to defend Australia and sometimes other countries' interests, or gas companies' interests, but not trusted enough to have a firearm here at home to go hunting. And I think that's a great insult, and to our police officers as well. I know police officers who have had to hand in firearms who have been told that you can't you can't like that page. Things like that have been restricted on their private life because of their service life. So it is an insult to everyone. And again, we are a very peaceful state, and there's a lot of us out here that have got high levels of training and experience with firearms, and we're being told that we aren't trusted with them, despite having done nothing wrong, nothing untoward to other people with firearms, and made no threats, nothing. And I again fall back to, I'm a little bit skeptical about why they feel so strongly that people shouldn't have firearms. I still cannot understand why they feel that way. What have we done as a people? You know, we're the largest state here. We have some of the biggest feral problems that are unchecked, and we have the highest level of restriction. We didn't even follow the NFA. WI just turned around and just went, "We're going over the line with that. We're going to take it to the next level." And it again, I still can't understand why. We've not had the issues. We don't have the issues. Again, it's the illegal crime side of things. Do you think they're going to turn around and go, "Oh, hey, I should hand these in the buyback"? But no, it's not even like in the US where you get to play games with buybacks and take in firearms that you've just, 3D printed up something that won't even work, but you're going to get money for it. So yeah, I feel insulted um, by this government and the treatment of firearms owners, and the vilification of firearms owners is just un, un unbelievable. I don't know how we can be having this in a nation like ours. It reads like from a bad novel. So yeah, I'm strong. Well, I'm deeply disappointed in it, and yeah, I'm hurt by it, and to many of my friends as well, they feel as if a disservice has been done to them, considering what they have done for their country and what I signed up to do for our country, and said that we would defend it. And you sort of sit there and go, do we really need to? Like, do do, would- do we need to defend this? Like, what what are we defending? A government that doesn't trust us for another government that doesn't trust us? Maybe a government that will allow us, well, not even, maybe not us, but, you know, make the full potential of the land that we have, this bountiful country that could be doing so much more, and is tied up by the shackles of, oh, you've got to protect the environment. Australia, you're emitting too much carbon because you don't have enough people. What we're going to do is we're going to throw all of the people we don't want in Europe your direction. And we're going to fill your country with all of the people we don't want in our countries. And we're going to do it to you by saying that you are putting too much carbon and carbon equivalents into the atmosphere. Meanwhile, you've got other countries which are building more coal power plants than we have in the entire country every year. And it's, yeah, you can't help but think that there's something else that is occurring there, and it's to the detriment of that Australian heritage and the history we've got behind us of struggling through adversity. It's hard enough living in this environment, let alone having your own government attacking you. So I can't help but feel that it is an attack. And people are going to say, "Oh, you just, you want guns for fun and everything." It's like, no, guns are a tool. They're a sport. It's a discipline. It's got so much more to it. It's one of the things I don't do anymore up here because it's uneconomical. I used to love reloading and
Mm,
ballistics and
mm,
studying and looking at the entire mechanism. How firearms work is incredible, and it's a cool part of the development of our entire world. And it's being vilified when the history says that the the people who can be trusted the least with firearms are governments that take firearms off their people.
mm. And let me just give you the final opportunity to give your pitch to the people of Western Australia. Why should they vote one Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party on the 8th of March? Why should they vote for your party? Yes, we've talked about preferencing Labor in the past. I just have to point out, because I'm a journalist and I appreciate facts, the last election that we had in WA, we had a thing called group voting tickets in the upper house. There's lots of wheeling and dealing and preference deals going on. I was in Victoria where they still have that system in 2022, and that's what they did. There was preferencing going on there. People who voted for Tim Quilty, the Liberal Democrat, the Libertarian Party in his electorate, his vote ended up transferring to the Animal Justice Party, of all people who are on the other side of the spectrum. This is politics. This is the system that has been designed by the politicians in charge. This is what they do. They put us in a corner and you have to play the game. I'm not justifying it. I'm saying the system is against what the people want. We do not have group voting tickets anymore in WA in the upper house. It's every man for himself. So Jack Carmody, if people vote for Shooters, Fishers and Farmers on the 8th of March this weekend, are they going to be guaranteed your preferences in the upper house? Because that's where it counts. I'm sorry to break the news to people watching. It's very hard to get elected as a minor party in the lower house. It's a different system. It's very difficult. That's why you do not really see minor parties elected there. The upper house is where it counts. It's the house of review. It's the house where we can get things like a review of the Firearms Act across the line. So tell us, Jack, why the people of WA, your home state, my home state, the best state in Australia, why they should vote for your party on the 8th of March.
Well, it's an old saying. It's been said many times, but to keep the bastards honest, like outright, we're going to have people in there that are not afraid to call out the bullshit. We've got people who are free thinking. They're not constrained by a party line or a quorum, or going to get thrown into the back corner and fed shit. That they're free thinking people on our ticket. We've got experienced people who have done stuff with their hands. And again, I like to quote Stuart on this one, because he goes, we have got the blood on our hands. We have done this job. We aren't afraid of it. And it really is to keep them in check. Just get up and just go, think about it for a second. Think about what you're doing to the people. Speaking out against poor policies, poor spending. I mean, hell, one of the things we'd love to do is just open the books and just have a look at what they've spent.
Richest state in the nation, and you have homeless people on the streets here in Perth. It's abhorrent what they're doing to the people. So I agree.
And we have some of the worst infrastructure. Our number 3 way in and out of the state is still gravel. And just this morning, there was an article about Roger Cook saying, just wait another few years, promising for a highway that was meant to have been finished a couple of years ago. And the money still isn't coming. And it's being bound up by silly rules that they've put in place and allowed people to manipulate the system, where they were going to be spending more money in royalty payments to pave a road than in doing the paving. And that's a system that's abused. And that's what's bleeding our state of progress. And so, no, we are a party of free-thinking people who aren't going to sit there and go, you can't say that. It's going to be stand up. People already hate shooters. That's the big thing. People see it and they, go, shooters, you guys are all about guns. It's like, well, they can't label us as a pro-gun party when it's in our damn name. Yes, of course we are. We're not afraid of it. We are shooters, fishers and farmers. We are the core fundamentals of what has ever built a society. And the idea is that the people that we're putting up for election are people that are going to sit there, listen, think about it, and say no. And what we would love to do is have enough power in there to pull the pin on shit legislation and, hold them up, hold them to account, make them change. And yes, the Labor Party do occasionally come up with some good ideas, things that are good for the people. We won't turn around and just vote no to be obstinate and hurt the people. If it's a good policy, it's a good policy. It doesn't matter what color it has come from. And we don't want to be governed by that idea. And that is what has gotten Australia into the situation that we are, where we get people who will only vote the party line, they'll only vote for their colour, and it hurts our country because it's the time they take in this bullshit squabbling over the colour of the policy, only to get in themselves and slam the same policy through, just change the label. Great example was The Voice. It was a bloody Liberal idea, and then the Reds came in, made it a hell of a lot worse, and yeah, screwed the pooch. So, nah, if you want people that are going to sit there and speak their mind, stand up and say no to oppression, say no to things that are going to take away from people's ability to live their lives the way they want to, voting for the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party is going to get you people that are going to listen to you. Because, again, as someone has said, you're not. Sergeant Sirius has said that the mining companies aren't paying our dues. No, they're not. No one's throwing big money at us. Shooting organisations aren't throwing money at us to help support shooters. We are doing this off bloody just about nothing to fight for some reasonable people in Parliament with common sense. And I can tell you that gas companies aren't going to come in and waste our politicians, our representatives' time, because they're going to go, oh yeah, Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, oh no, they've got no power, nothing. So we're not going to get humbugged by, 15 lobbyists from different oil, gas, mining companies. We're going to have the time for the people, and that's who we want to listen to and we want to represent, because we are working people and we are normal, and we know what it's like. And hell, you get someone in there who's been in business, private business, owned their own businesses, been in small businesses and seen the suffering and pain that can be imparted by government overreach. They're going to be in there making some pretty harsh decisions when it comes to spending, because you're not going to buy shit that you don't need. So I'm going to call it out and just go, we don't need to build another Perth Convention Centre. No, be happy enough with the one it is. It might be ugly, cool. There's no point ripping it apart and spending taxpayer money on it. Let's build that hospital. Let's build that highway. Let's get the rail network working again. Let's, get this thing going, because we really are spending money in the wrong areas, and it's people who sit there and go, oh, it's not my money. I'm happy to throw this money out there. Oh, it's not mine. It's just the tax money and stuff. No, we pay taxes for a service. Our taxes should be going into our communities, into our safety, our security, and our infrastructure, rather than blowing it on frivolous projects that achieve nothing for a strategic goal. And we've got these damn 4-year politicians who jump in there, build their vanity project, bell tower, and leave the state poor, damaged. Again, we are bringing in a whole load of money into this state, and we should be putting it into the state. It should be invested in the economic development of our state, and tourism and events, and paying, bands to come to Western Australia. That's not a good use of taxpayer money. No, we should be spending it on things like allowing people to irrigate in the middle. We should be building better roads. We should be making sure that people want to live out in the regions, so then we can grow food, because food and water security is national security. You can feed your adversary. They've got no reason to come in and do it themselves. But at the moment, the way that we're building our nation is setting it up for someone else to come in and just go, come on, you should be growing more food. You should be selling the food to us. They should be a trade partner, not an adversary. They shouldn't be a threat to our national security and our sovereignty. They should be our biggest customer, and we shouldn't be dictated to by them or another foreign nation or a United Nations policy as to what we can do with our own damn country. It is Australia, it is Australians, and we will not be told by unelected officials sitting over in New York or in bloody Brussels how many people we can bring into our country, what we can do with our land, and what energy source we can use. We've got the richest uranium in the entire world. We shouldn't pay for electricity at all. We should be turning around and building more stuff here. And really, this comes in from a state level. Fix WA's problems, then we can fix the rest of the nation. And I'm half tempted, if I don't get into state, have a crack at federal and just go, we've got to sort this crap out, because the direction the country's going is sad, and we should be getting ourselves built.
Well, to my listeners, you don't have to apologize. I'm sitting here and I feel like I've just interviewed the next president of Australia. This is the kind of person that we need. This is why I'm so humbled to be in the position that I'm in. Just by posting memes and by stirring up everything that I can and not giving a flying F about anything, I get to talk to inspirational people like Jack Carmody, who, to me, he is a leader. He is exactly what we need for the future of our country. And Jack, I honestly think one day you and I will lead the peaceful revolution of this beautiful state, because you are just inspirational. And I cannot thank you enough for all the work that you do, all the videos. I know you feel kind of when you're pulling out your camera and you're doing so. We're not that kind of person. You're the same as me. We're very humble. We love our families. We just want to live in peace and do what we want with our guns and our family and be prosperous in this beautiful country that we call home. But we're forced in this position because we do not have the leaders that we deserve. We do not have the politicians that we deserve to lead this country. And honestly, I just have this feeling that you are going to be a superstar and you are going to save our nation. So thank you so much for joining me on this special last minute put together edition of Shooting the Breeze with Lady Liberty. I will be putting this up on Spotify after this. I'll be doing clips because you had some great rants. I love a good rant. I feel like you and I are so similar. I hope we get to have a beer one day. I know our paths have not crossed yet. We need to have about 10 beers, I think, 10 Swanee drafts. If you drink them, I'll give them a go. So, Jack, and anyone listening, if this has spoken to you, you have an election here in WA on the 8th of March. Listen to what Jack said. Stuart Austell is the number one candidate. I can personally vouch for him. He's an absolute bloody trooper. He's so humble. He is so hurt by what has happened in WA, personally hurt by the new laws. I can guarantee that when he goes into Parliament, he is there to represent the people. We are not the kind of people, as you've seen from Jack today, we don't like the games. We cut the bullshit. We just want what's best for the people of this beautiful state. Stuart will be that person for you if you want to give him a vote. What Jack said tonight is what you will get from him in Parliament. So, Jack Carmody, if anyone wants to follow him, he's Jack Out the Back. He's huge on Instagram, he's huge on YouTube, and he's graced me with his presence tonight while I'm in Perth. Thank you so much for joining me. I will talk to you again soon. And if you want to support, I just have to get this in. I'm nearly at my target. I want to go to court. Kate versus the state. I'm challenging these bloody gun laws. We cannot live with them. I know we're going to have people in Parliament like Stuart, maybe even Jack, fighting against the gun laws, but I can't wait 4 years for a review. I'm not about waiting. I want justice now. So if you can donate to my cause, I'm nearly there. I've booked a meeting with my lawyer on Monday, the 10th of March, because I know I'm going to make it. Even though no shooting organisation in WA has donated to me, that's fine. That's fine. Jack and I will do it on our own. We don't need your support. We have the support of the people because we are here fighting for the people. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Jack, for joining me. You're a bloody legend. I can't wait to meet you in person. Any last words of hope? Are you black-pilled? Are you white-pilled? Are you feeling like we have a hope of saving this country? Can you give us some words of inspiration?
Not going to say make Australia great again.
Where's your red cat, bro? You'll be kicked out of the country like that.
Yeah. No, we do. We have to be optimistic to be in this game, and we are taking hits left, right, and centre from even our own side, which is disappointing to see. We do have hope, and there is a growing sentiment amongst the population that there does need to be change. And I feel that if we are able to start making these changes now, small improvements every day, we are going to be able to rebuild our nation as a nation state, not as a proxy, and we'll be able to stand on our own feet. We have the ability, we have the history, we have the heritage, and we have the strength of people wanting to come to our country, and they can add strength to our country. So we start to make the changes now, and it's going to be little bit by little bit. We can get back to a nation that is progressive in the sense that we are actually going to move forward economically and developmentally. So, no, I have hope, and I think that we have people that are willing to support that as a movement, that as a principle and a way of living. And I have to absolutely say, to you, Kate, thank you very much. It's been good fun. I reckon that we definitely will be able to have a lot more of a laugh when we get together and catch up for a couple of beers, because yeah, the it's great jumping on and having a chat to you. It's always good fun. When we've been on the phone, we've had a few times where we've gotten a little bit depressed and gone into the dark, mode, and what hope do we have? But when we do it, we've got to do it with a smile, and that's something that I've always said amongst the Shooters, Fishers, Farmers Party is, we've got to do this with a smile. We've got to have fun with it. If we're not smiling, we're crying, and at least when we smile, it's honest. It's a lot of fun, and when you've got the energy like yourself to work off, it's incredible, and I'm so jealous of your trip over to the US. It's you've done a lot. You're out there. You're outspoken, and I think that one of the best things is that you and I can disagree on a lot of things, but there's one thing that we certainly agree on, and it is that we cannot let Australians get beaten up the way that they are being now, and Western Australia has to be the spot that we start. And I thank you for coming over, to WA, to get involved in it, to be there, to start asking the people that aren't going to get asked by anyone else the questions and their thoughts and their beliefs. And it is, it's very valuable. I'm hopeful that in one of these later rounds we can team up and be a full fighting force, because we certainly can change a little bit of the political sphere from the well-fed milk baby who's ended up as a politician, and to put it with a smile, the grumpy old white guy. Um, you know, we need to change that landscape, and it doesn't need to have anything to do with DEI. It just has to do with the merit of the people and the caliber and their willingness to speak their mind. Because we used to have a time where we had politicians that would, and I think it's time.
Well, everything in life is about timing, positioning, and courage. And I think one day, Jack, one day we'll save WA. But good luck at the election on the 8th of March. Thank you again for joining me and sharing your expertise in this very specific area of firearms laws. You've been in WA your whole life. You're a WA born and bred. You're an absolute bloody legend. And thank you. Please donate to me if you can. And please, if you want to, vote for Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party on the 8th of March. The number 2 on the upper house ticket. You don't have to look very hard across to put a 1 there. So if they spoke to you tonight, if Jack presented an argument that you agree with, he's convinced me. I was going to put legalized cannabis, but now I'm not too sure. But good luck at the election, WA. I'm so blessed to be back in this state that I call my home. It's worth saving, and this is where change can begin. So thank you, everybody, and I'll see you soon. I'll be doing a live stream Sunday night so we can talk about the election result. Hopefully we won't be crying too much. Hopefully we'll be celebrating Stuart Austell from Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party being elected. Exciting times ahead for the best state in Australia, Western Australia. Good night, and thank you again, Jack. You're an absolute bloody legend.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, everyone, for listening to us. Well, I can't hear you, and I'm pretty sure the stream's shut.